Good evening, everyone. This is Skinny E Media, or Mark, speaking to you with two of the great minds behind Red Snapper, a band that I used to listen to quite a lot from their Prince Blimey days, all the way now to their new upcoming album, as well as Key and Hyena. What an absolutely phenomenal band they are. I could go on for hours about it, but I'd like to introduce you to Richard Thair and Alistair Friend. How do you do, fellas?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great myself. It's not often I get to talk to bandmates that much. Last time I talked to Simon Mills from Bent and Funky Porcini, James Bradle, and a French jazz group called Les Monts Brothers, which I thought was pretty interesting as well. But it's so nice to have you on board.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And we're certainly on board.
Yeah, certainly there. So let's get started with some of the brilliant questions I have for you in mind, if I still have them. So
we can't wait.
I know with the COVID pandemic, it has been devastating for the music industry everywhere. I'm sure you probably had to work maybe even at Amazon warehouse or Tesco just to get on by, because those furlough payments probably couldn't cover you up when you couldn't perform because of COVID.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the biggest loss for us was not being able to gig. I mean, we've still got ways of trying to write music and communicate, as everyone does. But I think we missed gigging. We always have a lot of gigs, particularly abroad, in Eastern Europe, and those have been cancelled. Potential little tours were stopped. So, and I think it's the funny thing with that is you realise it's kind of who you are. It's part of your makeup as a musician to be playing live, and because we couldn't, particularly with Red Snapper, it's a real. I think for both me and Rich, it's a physical outlet and a mental outlet. So I missed that. I found that difficult, I must admit.
We were very lucky that back in September, in the thick of it, we were lucky enough to be sponsored by the Arts Council of England to play a little festival or a gig in Woodbridge in Suffolk, sponsored by or organised by Ben Osborne, and that was a real lift for us to be able to get together and rehearse as a band. And after lockdown, it was so important to us, and it made us realise what we'd missed, as Ali said, was the physical thing of being in a room together and playing our music. And we also got the chance to road test a couple of the new tracks from the forthcoming Red Snapper album, and it was a wonderful experience, and it really picked us up in dark times, to be honest.
Yeah, I would say this is definitely the most challenging part of our time that we have been in, at least for me, because I'm a person of the 1990s. I'm sure for you, because you probably grew up during the Thatcher years, and that was quite tumultuous as well. I'm very glad that you had a few opportunities here and there to perform your craft. You're definitely one of the greatest bands that I am at least aware of, because I know a lot of people like to compare you to other electronic music acts like Massive Attack and Portishead, but you're not really electronic music. I would say you're jazz through and through. Would you agree with that?
How dare you? No, I don't know. I think we've been called so many things. I think the thing with us is that it's always been very difficult for anyone to try and define what we do, because there's obviously a lot of influences and a lot of sounds that are floating around the Red Snapper sort of world. I think we have a jazz sensibility, but we also have a hip hop sensibility, and we use a lot of electronics, and we like playing with acoustic sounds and making it not what you'd expect to hear, trying to get the most out of a drum hit or a double bass pluck. I suppose it's like a spirit of experimentation more than anything else. So I think that's probably how we look at ourselves.
Yeah, I would agree with that there, because in my research of music, usually self-taught, I would say you are closest in spirit to, take this for granted, Weather Report, Return to Forever, Chick Corea, that's who I feel you are closest in spirit to, more so than even Massive Attack, or even on the end, Miles Davis, because of that fusion of elements and genres in a lot of your sounds. I've even put it politely to even a friend at one time, if Prince Blimey feels like Buddy Rich, making Bones takes a Miles Davis approach, and our aim is to satisfy feels like Jamiroquai, then Key feels like Radiohead, and Hyena feels like Fela Kuti.
At the time, back if we're talking about back in the day in '96 or whatever, with Prince Blimey, there was a weather report comparison. I think we were as much influenced by bands like Can and A Certain Ratio,
Yeah.
and I think those bands themselves were influenced by the people that we were also influenced by, who were the jazz greats. But it was more, as Ali said, it was more about the sensibilities of it and the emotions. We never really thought that much about it, to be honest. I think it was about what we were listening to at the time and what we wanted to achieve. And in terms of who was making music at the same time, be it, I don't know, Massive Attack, Lamb, Tricky, the whole Ninja Tunes thing, and then Mo Wax, you know, some of that was live, some of it was very much sample based. And we felt like we sat in amongst that, but we didn't ever feel like we belonged in that. And I think at times we tried to mirror it. I think at times we tried to do our own version of it, and that's all we did. We've only ever done our own version of things, be it Afrobeat or dub or or funk or Afro funk. We've always just tried to keep it personal, and that's what it's always been about, us, without compromise.
I thank you for your approach and perspective on the sounds there, because that was just my original thoughts here and there. But over time, as I've listened to your music, because I often listen to a lot of songs on repeat, I've developed my own sort of awareness that you are definitely a band of your own kind.
That's the best thing. If you say that, then I think we've succeeded, because I think that's all we want. We
I
want
agree.
our own thing. It's just natural to desire to form your own path, you know. And I think there's obviously, you can hear influences in what we do, but we've always, as Rich said, tried to do it in our own way. Sometimes partly because we didn't really know how to do it. And by not knowing how to do it, you discover things about yourself and you discover about what things you love. So, but some of the other, you know, Miles is obviously in there, and there's Mingus in there, and, you know, Radiohead influenced everyone, didn't it, really? So, or they still do.
Are pretty much there, especially from their Kid A years. And in terms of Miles Davis, Bitches Brew and In a Silent Way were definitely noted influences. I think there was one song that you'd done from your early days on Reeled and Skinned EP, The Snapper, The Swank, Hot Flash, Lobster, one of my all-time favorites. Absolutely beautiful. It sounds like something you would hear in a Silent Way, or like on Mysterious Traveler, the Weather Report album. It just the sort of smooth sounds. I can't create double bass sounds, but I actually make
Got
music
it fairly
myself.
well, actually.
Just so I know, are you playing air bass there? That is air bass. It's very cool.
Yes.
Yeah, very cool.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
Something that's one of my favorite Red Snapper tracks. It always has been. And a sad note on that track is that we recently lost Alan Riding, who played sax and flute and melodica on that track, and he recently died, unfortunately.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
I wasn't sure if you knew, but that, you know, a massive shout to him and his family and condolences, because he was a big part of things when we first started the band, and with Reeled and Skinned, he was a huge part of it. So, but I think things moved on quite swiftly from that first lot of releases to say Prince Blimey, and then when we moved on to the next albums. So yeah, you know.
That transition with a lot of your music, because I know you first started on the Warp Records label, which is by for everyone's knowledge is actually my favorite label of all time. I know you worked with Low, I used to work with V2 at one point, and that always piqued my curiosity because for some reason, after talking to Warp fans, they couldn't quite put Prince Blimey in a particular spot because of the genre classifications like we talked about earlier on. But I think that was the charm of it all. And about Prince Blimey, which will be having its 25th anniversary, was it more or less original ideas that you come up between you and your lot? Or was it commissioned by Warp because the Snapper, the Swank, those EPs were so successful?
I think at the time, Steve and Rob at Warp, with the great support of our manager then, Steve Butler, they had a kind of vision, and which then eventually followed through with Warp Records, in that they then actually worked with quite a lot of bands that work with acoustic instruments. I think it was just that we were one of the first bands bands that used real instruments as opposed to electronic instruments. I think that's really a big shout to Steve and Rob at Warp, who believed in it, and the staff in that office who wanted to take a punt on something new, which is what we should all celebrate about independent labels in Britain, which has kept us all going over the years, you know, is they saw something there. What's wrong with signing something that's completely at a tangent to what you're currently putting out, you know? They'd nailed the electronic scene, and I think they were looking for something different. We were signed off the back of a live performance at Glastonbury, really, weren't we, Ali?
Yeah.
You know, we played the jazz stage, and both Warp Records and EMI Music signed us because they just, I don't know why, they saw something live, they saw the passion, and they saw something that perhaps had some bones, you know, some future.
Yeah, now you're making bones. The second
Hey,
album
I
that
see
would
what
soon
you've done
follow.
there.
But yes, that album is absolutely phenomenal. It's in my top 25 alongside My Bloody Valentine's Loveless, Born to Canada's, Campfire Head Phase,
And
and
where
the
are we in
Gorilla's
the
debut.
25? Where are we in the 25 though? Tell
Are we
me we're not 24, please.
425? We're number 2.
22?
Numero dos.
We are.
Well, there are
Ah,
a few reasons for that.
well,
Because number one is an album that actually is the first one I owned as a child. It was Eminem's Music Classics. So I have to
okay.
hold down a particular high regard. But number two
I'll
for
give you that.
Prince
I'll give you
Blimey.
that.
Wow.
You know, I hear the sort of acoustic instrumentation and the strong bass sound, especially on the last one. If you don't mind me, let me just do the air sounds.
Yeah, go on.
Man, oh man, that's almost would beat Les Claypool from Primus to the Punch, or Tom Jenkinson from Square Pusher.
I love you. That's so good.
That's so good. You need to do an album of this stuff, no?
You already have a dub version of Prince Blimey. Maybe I could probably do one that uses the sounds of my throat, beatboxing.
It's very good, man.
The interesting thing with that tune, well, lots of interesting things, but that there's a sample, a vocal sample in that, and that vocal sample comes from that gig at Glastonbury, which got us signed. When we've got Last One, I'm shouting Last One, and people in the audience are shouting Superb. Well, in fact, it's a couple of our mates are shouting Superb. So that we've recycled that that sample, that bit of vocal, and put it in Last One, and we still do that live, don't we? I mean, it's kind of an amazing thing.
It's a track that still works live. Like many of the Prince Blimey tracks, we still play Space Sickness, which is one of the big ones in the live set. So yeah, it was
And
an
get some
important
sleep.
album.
Get some sleep, Tiger, as well. Is always it's a big hit.
Because another one I also like as well is Crusoe Takes a Trip. That absolutely sounds like soundtrack music to me that you would hear in a sort of artsy European suspense thriller with a very attractive woman and a guy who looks like a John Hamm or George Clooney, fighting a Russian agent who's undercover and is going to the south of France. It's not James Bond, but it might as well be.
No,
Shaken not
God.
stirred.
Okay.
Hey, I don't know if you're filmmakers.
Ali.
I'll take that. I'll take that. I think it's a good image for me every time we play that. It is very cinematic, that track. It's very cinematic, and whoever's playing me, George Clooney could play me when we make the film of us. Who would play you, Rich? Would it be
Don't go there. Don't
Okay.
go it.
No, right. You know what I'm gonna say.
We won't even say, but we could even put MC Det into the film as well. He'd be like the one trying to help him out with this undercover mystery that was conducted by Crusoe, who is actually Krustukova, who's a Russian agent who's trying to take his woman. Her name is Renato Isabella, and she's Italian. And we know what, okay, maybe I'm getting a bit ahead of myself.
No, you're not. This is I like this interview. It's a lot more interesting than most of them. Trust me.
I am absolutely honored you even said that there, which will make me want to do even a sort of hum voice for Moonbuggy, but I won't do it there. That's actually.
Come on. No, let's hear it. Can we hear it, please?
I mean, if I saw you two lot with a guitar off with Les Claypool, he would be crying tears. He'd beat him to the punch. I don't know if you like Primus, but that's another band that uses bass heavily.
Yeah.
And fucking rocks at it, like Tony Levin from King Crimson. And Elephant Talk on Discipline, King Crimson, definitely reminds me a lot of your stuff as well.
Okay.
Especially on Some Kind of Kink, which is not on my first or second favorite Red Snapper song, but I know that's on Our Aim Is to Satisfy. That will come out in a few years for its 25th anniversary. But about that music video for Some Kind of Kink, how was that even made? It was just
I know.
it just
That
looked
was all done with a scanner. That was a scanner, just a normal scanner, and it was with a director, a filmmaker, Richard Anthony, who is very talented, and yeah, we just scanned ourselves.
Yeah, that video was brilliant. We really enjoyed. I really enjoyed doing it because it was. I think it's the same thing. It's kind of what he caught there, Richard Anthony, was just the whole sort of visceralness of what we are. There's something very sort of physical, again, I suppose, and a bit twisted about what we do. And he really caught that with the way he made us roll our heads across scanners, and he had even put an umbrella on Det's head, didn't he? Which is I can't imagine anyone ever being able to get away with that. MC Det, he's not he doesn't easily like his image played with,
No, he seems like he's quite particular. He's got that sort of hard man vibe about him. Yeah. Behind closed doors, things get rough. Every start with a feeling, yeah. Reminds me a lot of that.
That's weird because he's actually a childminder now.
Oh, he is? Oh, he's still doing music because I follow him on Instagram.
Yeah, he's still doing music. He's with Broccoli still.
Yeah, I mean, he still lives. I live in Hackney in London. He's still around here. I still see him every now and then.
All right, then.
He looks great still, I have to say. He's still got the perfect body.
Are you going to get him back for the upcoming album? And for the upcoming album, you have any titles in mind?
Yeah.
Yes, thanks.
It's all.
Okay, we won't openly
No,
discuss it?
no, we won't be working with MC Det on the new album. New albums won't be out till next year, but is pretty much there.
Yeah.
We're working with some interesting vocalists. A fantastic guy called Natty Weiler, who's on 2 tracks, and he'll be on the next single, which is out in probably November time. Who else? Layla Assam is
Layla
singing on a track. Ali's singing on quite a couple of tracks. Well, how many? 3?
Mhm. Singing is words
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
Tuneless words.
Nothing wrong with spoken word. I actually do spoken word myself on some music on the side. I go by the name Head
Do you?
Smoke. It's very sort of,
Can we hear some?
oh yes, of course. £7.25, £6.80. You can't get any more than that. And even worse, being homeless or having no means of employment. Let's stick with jobs this time. You're a young person at work, trying to get ahead in life. You could think of me as the next Jason Williamson, who, mind you, let me just hold you for a second. He was almost going to work with you, but then he didn't. And he even included Prince Blimey on one of his favorite albums, the Sleaford Mods guy. Did you work with Jason at one point?
No, I've read his interviews though, mate. And yeah, you know, I love Sleaford Mods. So that's all I can say really about. I don't know if he was ever going to work with us. Was he, Ali?
I don't know. He credited us, didn't he? He liked us. He was influenced by us, but I'm not sure if did he say he was going to work with us?
I don't remember him inviting us to work with him, but there you go.
All right, maybe that's just urban legend because it was mentioned on maybe the website or Wikipedia, which can be unverified.
Maybe we missed. Did we miss that email, Ali?
Maybe has he maybe worked with somebody else like us? Is there another band?
Is it Bent? Bent? Because they said he was almost going to work with them, but that never happened because
There's a
he was
word you're
flatmate
using
with,
a lot here. Almost. He almost worked with. Anyway, you know. So no, we like what they do. They're
I
cool.
love what they do. I've seen them live a few times. They're brilliant. It's a proper attitude, which I like. And very, very, very. What I also like about them, the humour is just astounding. They're just that's just how they are. It never seems affected. They're having a laugh. They're from a particular, they're from the Midlands, aren't they? I think Sleaford, Grantham.
Yeah, like Nottingham.
Nottingham.
Because I'm friends with Simon Mills and Neil Tolliday of Bent, who Neil Tolliday was the roommate of Jason Williamson. I probably shouldn't be talking about other bands, but there's comparisons here and there. And I've listened to Key Markets and Divide and Exit, which are number 10 on my top 25. You're number 2. And he's definitely stole your style with the bass. Like there's a one song called Corgi, or Bronx in at 6. And it was like you might have to sue Andrew Fern if you have one chance.
It's good. You like bass, don't you? I'm hearing that you like bass.
It's my favorite instrument, aside from the synthesizer. I don't have instruments myself, but I use GarageBand lately for a lot of my sounds. And anytime I put in sort of double bass or even Liverpool setting of the bass guitar, like the Beatles, like Paul McCartney, John Lennon, it has that sort of gravelly. I even sample and loop it, and we twist the sounds. It's absolutely beautiful. And you were definitely an inspiration to a lot of the work I was doing. Even put some of it on my documentaries as well. So yeah.
Well, you can see you see the bass case back here. That's been around the world a few times with it. It's quite nice. Just stickers from all over Russia with fragile, where they haven't actually paid any attention to it being fragile.
And actually, the vocalist who features most on our album, Natty Weiler, is locked inside it.
Natty?
Oh,
Is he still in there, Ali?
I'm not hearing him anymore, but I'm sure he's all right.
Try help me out.
Let me
Get me
out.
out of here. Or maybe it's Edgar Wright. He might be in there because Edgar Wright used some kind of kink on Spaced for Channel 4. Or maybe it's
Here we
Chris
know.
Morris. He seems to like a lot of your music as well.
Interesting.
Hello,
I
Edgar
think
Wright.
go,
Chris Morris.
I think going back to what you're saying, that we've like Det's not on this, and there's Natty on it. We always try and find new people. We always try and keep things moving, and we collaborate with. You know, at the beginning we used to collaborate with a different horn player or a different musician on each album, and it's for us. It's just really nice to keep moving and have the opportunity. You know, to work with Det's brilliant, but that was then, and now Natty is also brilliant. And this Layla, vocalist Layla Assam, is also, she's going to be massive, I think. She's just got the sweetest voice, you know, very, very soulful lady. So I feel pleased to be doing that, just to keep moving it. And I think that's something that we've always been proud of doing, you know. We're trying to keep testing ourselves, you know, keep finding new ways.
And that's the best part about it, because you could be like, U2 makes the same sort of music every once in a while, or Madonna, but you lads have style and talent and the bravado to make also some killer album covers as well. The artwork for Prince Blimey, and also the name itself, it kind of gives me a claustrophobic sort of vibe about it, or maybe it's based on voodoo. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the inspiration was for the name and the artwork.
Well, the artwork, it was a friend of ours called Anis Harrison, and she was really into voodoo, and she was into dolls, and she was into just twisting images. She's an artist, and she used to, in fact, come on tour with us when we played live, and she used to project images onto us. She had lots of sort of dolls which she would get killing each other and decapitating each other, which is quite cheery.
So she used two old school slide projectors, and would actually, like quite a couple of AV DJs did at the time. She was literally chopping in with her hands, covering the images, and it was just all her work, all her artwork that was based around the Prince Blimey stuff. And well, they're called Wanga dolls, aren't they?
Yeah.
And there's some great images that weren't used. There's some of the EPs have got, I actually think some of the imagery on the EPs are better than the album itself. But she was a massive part of the live show, and art has always been really important to us with every album. We've always tried to find someone who has the same sensibilities and emotions as us and understands the music, and we continue to work like that with artists and designers. It's really important to us, I think, and it's so much harder these days when the physical thing isn't such a big deal. You know, it's so much harder to convey how you, I don't know, your art and your imagery. And we're lucky enough to be able to play live, and we can project, etc. But with Anis, it was really special because it was very organic and live at the time, and it was different every night, which is what the Red Snapper live set is, you know.
I've never heard it from that perspective. I wish I was there, because I was unfortunately too young to go to any music sets there. But if I saw the artwork as it was happening while you're performing live, I would have been instantly wowed by what was present. And it definitely gives this sort of, maybe claustrophobic's the wrong word, sort of edgy edge to it, almost like a jazz fusion record. Like you don't know where you're going, but then you're here, either you're there, or it's ominous and mysterious. I even feel that way about Our Aim Is to Satisfy as well, which is on the surface looks like it's an ad for transportation for London with the ambulance and the motorways, like the A junction. But and then you also have that promo design, which also shown where you could create an ambulance on its own, which I thought was very clever. It appealed to my sort of childlike sensibilities, at least at the time. But now that I'm
the
older,
thing is, it reflected what was going on at the time, and for us, it was very much about a sort of urban, perhaps being a bit lost in a city, and which maybe we were at the time, and it again, a lot of thought has always gone into our art and what the way the art represents our music. That's really important, which is why we have so much respect for the artists and designers that we work with. It's really important to us.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about the sort of claustrophobic nature of some of those gigs as well, which was I think claustrophobic is a good word for it. I think we sort of embraced that a certain darkness. It's very compelling. I think compelling is another good word for it, actually. Compelling, dark, and a moodiness. So you're I always thought, if you were in one of our gigs, you were kind of stuck, you were trapped, and it was a good place and a bit of a bad place. But it was a real place, and I always liked that. And I think what Anis did with the images and the artwork really contributed to that. I think that I've always liked that idea that it becomes immersive. You know what I mean? It becomes an immersive experience.
Definitely, Red Snapper. Like I said earlier on about the cinematic edge, combined with the artwork, definitely provides a feel and a mood that cannot be replicated. On the flip side of artists, Boards of Canada makes you feel like you're watching something from the 1970s, an old videotape, or makes you feel like you're in Toronto or Calgary. Aphex Twin makes you feel like you're paranoid, disturbed, and you're about to kill someone. No offense to Richard D. James. And Tiesto makes you feel like you just took a shit. Faithless makes you feel like I'd be feeling all right with Maxi Jazz. And Bjork makes you feel like you're dancing on a lake through Reykjavik and you turn into Icicle. Maybe that's just my crazy imagination.
No, but that's your opinion, and that's what's amazing about you've just summed it up. Is everything makes people think in a different way, and that's what us as creators want to do, is excite people and make them think and challenge them. And that's, if you can do that, then you've achieved most of what you want to do, really.
Yeah.
Or certainly with Snapper, that's what we wanted to do, and that's what we still want to do. And with the new album, it's about challenging people, making them listen with an open ear and look with an open eye.
Oh, definitely, I would agree with you there. It's a feeling that cannot be replicated, whether it was on one hand. Okay, I got a little bit off tangent on my head, but certain songs provide a certain mood that even goes in a point to say, because I've heard this from a friend of mine, Red Snapper, it reminds me of music that you would drink Pimm's or Bailey's on the rocks near an airport lounge or an after-night business meeting after smoking a few Cubans. It's very a twee sound, upper class, kind of like Thievery Corporation. Is that an accurate statement, or is that just complete bollocks?
I think you know the answer to that. Well, each to their own, but I would say absolutely none of that.
None of that really made any sense to me.
Well, this wasn't my opinion. This was someone else's.
No. Well, it's great to hear your friends' opinions, and I just don't think that has a lot to do with where we're coming from, to be honest. At the best of times, when we make beautiful music, I don't think we try and make stuff that's acceptable or whatever the word was you used. I certainly can't imagine it in anywhere sophisticated or I don't know, relaxing really. Everything we've ever done has been aimed at, at challenging people, and
Because he kind of based his opinion on two particular tunes, Thomas the Fib
which
and
one?
Belladonna. And I love
Well, there you
Belladonna,
go. So he's picked
but that's not
two.
representative of all your Thai music. Your music is each
Well, what
song
do you
stands on
think?
its own feet. Each song stands on its own merits. But for me,
Bella, what's Belladonna? Do you know what Belladonna is?
like
Belladonna's a
bitter,
poison, right?
Poison, yeah.
I
Yeah,
put it literally
Belladonna's a
as
poison. So that's a really, yes, it is a really beautiful track, but I'd say there's an unsettling element to it, and it sits within an album that's truly unsettling, and um, we've never ever thought like that in our lives. You know, we make music, if we make something beautiful, it's because it's the background music to something that's probably quite wrong and cranky in our heads, if that makes sense. Do you agree, Ali?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'd have to agree. I mean, it's funny that when you described those your friend's words, and I was trying to think what tracks of ours go anywhere near that, and I did think on the surface maybe Belladonna because it has a surface of of sweetness, but you know, like most poisonous things and nasty things, they've got a surface which is very attractive and seductive. You go and sit on it, you slip in, and you get hammered. You know, and I think.
Everything nice has got a bite, right?
There's the flip side to everything. Maybe that's what we're doing. We're pulling you in with these lovely little horn lines and lovely little electronic lines, and then once you get too close, you get your ass bitten.
I would agree with that there. This is the same person that even thought Lemon Jelly's Lost Horizons is a great song to play to children, not realizing there's certain innuendos here and there. I think Lemon Jelly even put .ky, and then Music Has the Right to Children. He thought, oh, it can't be bad. And then when he heard 6010 and Color of Fire, he was like,
Well, I'd tell you something now, he won't be listening to your podcast anymore, will he?
well, I called him a bit of a twat, so I'm sure he'll take it lightly. My apologies there. I probably got a little bit
But
off
no, but we also really appreciate comments like that. How can you can't question yourselves or look at what you do if you don't hear things like that, and we don't always get to hear stuff like that. That's important to us.
Yeah.
How people interpret our music is massive to us.
I'm sure Andrew Weatherall, because he's done quite a few remixes of your work, he interpreted it in a way that no one else can even replicate. God rest his soul, Mr. Weatherall is no longer with us, but what was it like working with him, who made your songs even sort of...
Well, Rich, you knew him a lot better than I did. He was a friend of yours, really, wasn't he?
So I knew Andrew, and I played live with the Sabres, and obviously I was in the Aloof with Jags and Gary. I'd say with the Sabres remix of Hot Flush was very much led by Andrew, but I'd say musically was quite led by Gary. And it then, in terms of the production, it was perhaps about Jags, which is why I love that remix, because I think it represents all three of them. That they after that they remixed Bogeyman and Some Kind of Kink, and they took very different approaches to that, which reflects where they were musically. Andrew was his own man. I'd say me and Andrew didn't always see eye to eye. And I suspect Andrew didn't always like what Red Snapper, the music that we've made, but also I think Andrew respected a band's right to do their own thing, which was why he was such a lovely guy.
Yeah.
He was all about people being free and making the music that they need to make and sticking to their guns. He's greatly missed, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, may he be surely missed. I know he was kind of a friend of John Peel as well. I'm sure you probably knew John Peel at one point. I think he would be a man who, no longer with us, would have loved your music, even up to the Hyena and Key days. I don't know. Maybe that's just from my perspective there. But I know I got a little bit off tangent with some of the questions, which I apologize. But I'm sure we'll bring a sense of humor for everyone here as well. And in terms of working with Low, how has it been like for you? Because I've seen their repertoire of music, but they also release some of their compilations. Very impressive. Sometimes they even work, I believe, with a few Warp and Ninja Tune names as well.
Well, the thing is, don't forget that Low pretty much started, you know, not long after Warp did, if not at the same time, you know, and certainly before Ninja Tunes. John Ty was responsible for putting out some really experimental music very early on in the 90s, and we have massive respect for him and Gavin because they've stuck to their guns. The design is always amazing of what they do. They're very selective with what they release. We're really lucky that they've always supported us. And again, a bit like Warp, we've come at them with something that they perhaps didn't find easy to accept, but they trust us. They also have great belief in us as a live band. And I think Low Recordings is a totally is a really underrated label. They've put some great music out. John Ty's responsible for some brilliant ambient music that's coming out at the moment. And I just think we're in difficult times, aren't we? It's really hard for labels like that to survive. Perhaps up against the likes of Ninja Tunes and Warp, who I suspect in their own right are struggling a little bit. I think everyone is struggling. But Low Recordings are great. We've got no complaints. You know, we wouldn't be with them if they weren't a great label. There's a great team there. They work with young people. They're always looking for young people who be dealing with their social media, their PR, their press. They're just really proactive and positive.
No, I do, of course. I think like I think we've probably been really lucky because like Warp, they're just music lovers. That's the buck stops there. They're music lovers. They will sort of hunt out and only put out stuff which they think is good and which they love. As the same with Warp, and they put themselves out on a limb. They take risks, which I'm always firmly behind as an idea of moving forward in music. They'll take risks, and 98% of the time it'll work, and occasionally it won't. But at least they've tried it, and they are so supportive of us. I always get the feeling of them being a slight cottage industry, which I quite like as well. I feel like from the ground upwards, they're just putting things together slowly, and they put a package together of music and ideas and artwork, and then the way they promote it, it always feels totally contemporary. It always feels ahead of the curve. It always feels, slightly cutting edge.
Definitely, they're very, very modern label, and
Yeah.
and considering how long they've been going, massive respect to them.
Yeah.
Considering they're from our generation, they want to change everything. They're just fighting to change the way this industry runs, and it's really hard for them. It's really hard, and they're very good at what they do. So, huge respect to them.
Yeah.
Huge respect to them. I'll agree as well. I know I've talked to a few artists in my time, and they say that it's quite difficult to make money these days with tours and album sales because CDs now are popular. most people are just getting a lot of their music through streaming services, which only pay very small percentage. Apple Music slightly a little more than Spotify, and that's created a bit of problems for a lot of people who like to hone their craft and to where often not they move into other industries or perfect their craft through tours, which is how they make most of their revenue, which I think it's a sad sort of indication of the way capitalism and the industries have become, but it's just an unfortunate reality that people are living in. Did I mention about Edgar Wright earlier on and Spaced? Because when I first heard your song on films and TV, I heard it on Space, which was on Channel 4, or maybe it was on Blue Jam with Chris Morris, and I thought, how did they get that on there? That's not a very known song.
No, but at the time, so when we got Spaced, that was Some Kind of Kink, wasn't it? That was around there.
Yes.
That time.
Yeah.
Don't forget, was it the Brits or whatever Madonna came on to present the award with? She came on to Some Kind of Kink. So
Unfortunately, I don't quite remember
how
that.
And this all happened at a time when I DJ'd at the Natural History Museum with Kate Moss and Naomi Campbell. There was this sort of profile that Warp had, and they were very good at promotion and PR, and they nailed it at the time, right across the board. So not just the paper, the music press, but they were in there with the independent radio, but also they were clever because they knew how to get in with fashion, and they were way ahead of their time on that front. And all they were doing was pushing their music to people, which is what is now basically, they're the rules, aren't they? For most small labels, that's the only way you can do it. Get sync, get a fashion show. They were one of the first truly independent labels putting out absolutely insane music that managed to get that music used in a way that it crossed over, and it worked. It worked, and I mean that's too. Don't forget that at the same time, Aphex Twin did the Pirelli advert, and Warp had some huge adverts at the time. So they were very clever in how they did it, and they were forward thinking. Steve and Rob at Warp were just looking ahead all of the time, and that's why we loved them. That's why we like John and Gav at Low, because they're looking ahead the whole time. And I think in our industry there's too much of sort of retrospective moaning going, because of streaming we can't do it anymore. That's not helping anyone. What we have to do is look at how we can promote this the amazing music that's coming out from people, old gits like us, but also all the young music producers. It can be done, but you have to be creative, and the creative people have to become more powerful than the business people.
I would totally agree with you there. It's not easy. I know I'm a lot younger than you fellas, but I know trying to get into the industry, music-wise, is not an easy feat, especially with traditional ways like album and CD sales not being as quite as common as these, but also with the internet, there's now a sort of oversaturated pool of talent that they have to sort of pick and choose from. And often not the people with the most hits on Twitter or Instagram usually get the most attention. At least that's what I'm aware of. And sometimes that talent can be good, but most times it can be just terrible, like Rebecca Black and Lewis Capaldi. No offense to him, but I don't listen to UK top 20 hits. I don't listen to Billboard 200. I like what I like.
I think it's important that I think it is very hard for new bands and new musicians particularly, and I do think that a lot of the bands and a lot of these singers who get a lot of attention, there's a huge amount of investment in getting them onto playlists, and things are bought, algorithms are changed, and that's half the reason they get to where they are. And while I agree with Rich, there's no point us moaning about it too much. We have to keep finding ways of getting the music out there. And if anything, it's making us more creative. On the other hand, I do think that, you know, platforms like Spotify have got to be regulated a bit more, and they do keep pretending or claiming they're going to try and change it up a bit, because it is, I do think it's scandalous how much musicians are paid, how much money musicians get out of it. You've got that percentage who do incredibly fucking well, and then you've got a whole world of other musicians who are just struggling because they believe in it and that's what they want to do, and unless we all kick off about it, sometimes nothing will change. So hopefully, I mean, every now and then, you know, the British government say they're going to change it or try and look at it again. I do think we need to keep challenging those platforms, because they're just they're milking us, and they're milking talent. And at some point, we'll all have to give up. You know, it's hard enough for us. We've been going around we've kind of gone around a couple of times, if you like. We know how to play it a bit more, but it's still a struggle for us with a new band. It's so hard. You have to be prepared to put in the miles and the hours for a couple of years before you get anything, you know. Not easy.
I would totally agree with you, especially with the pandemic and Rishi Sunak's response to artists will have to find ways to play in other industries.
Oh God,
that does not play well with the likes of you lot. A few musicians that I'm aware of still work at the supermarkets or even do construction just so they can get on by. I know Cinematic Orchestra, I think the main guy behind that band, get to work in construction before he became famous. Mr. Scruff worked at Quick Save before he started DJing. He might have had to go back to Quick Save during COVID. I don't know.
He's going to really appreciate you saying that. So, good.
You know, Andy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll tell him I said hi. As well. I love knowing musicians here and there.
What do you think of the new singles in the last 6 months?
I was definitely a fan of them there. B Planet was definitely a return to the Prince Blimey days with its acoustic sound. That definitely made me happy. And also like the album artwork as well, almost looked like the interior of Mars. Maybe you might be going with a sort of space theme, kind of like Mysterious Traveler, Weather Report. That's just my my opinion. I can't wait to hear more of the songs that come up out. If you need
did you like the video for B Planet?
Yes, I did. Very much of its own sort of universe. I wish they had MTV Dance back in the day to show a lot of the great music videos that you put out just recently. So yeah, keep up the good work.
For us, that kind of represents how things have perhaps moved on rather quickly, in that YouTube's always been important to young people, in that a lot of the young people I work with will listen to tunes on YouTube, but they're not that fussed about what the visuals are. Mora, who did that video, put so much time into that, and it's clearly, you know, sort of genre defining, and it's really exciting, and it's something really special, but actually it wasn't kind of taken as anything that special, which was for our part a bit disappointing. But perhaps that represents where we're at now, is that people aren't that fussed about something visual that's really exciting, which takes us back to when we were talking about Anis and those live visuals. You know, perhaps our hearts were in that, and possibly we were misguided with that. You know, that a lot of time went into that project with that video. You've got to wonder now, is it worth even doing a video? Do you know what I mean?
No, I agree. I mean, at the same time, if just to sort of put on the creative hat, I think if you want to do something, you have to do it. And that video needed to be made. So whether or not it gets, you know, 1 million people seeing it, obviously the more the better. But at least it was done. If it doesn't get done, it would never get seen. So,
but why did 1 million people not see that? Did they not think it was very good, or did they actually not get to see it because of the way YouTube works? And
probably both.
I probably have a few theories on that. Algorithms. they can kick you in the ass too. Market share and demographics. Your music is wonderful, but many of the people I've talked to don't quite understand where to put it through a market demographic or whatnot. And three,
How many people do you
changing
know that
attitudes.
talk about market demographics, just out of interest?
Me and my mother.
See, there you go, Ali. I knew it. He knows two people that know about market demographics.
And probably Simon Mills from Bent. He seems like he would talk about, because he went into specifics about Spotify and Apple Music
Okay,
revenue.
no, I mean, I'm only, sorry, I'm just having a bit of a laugh there, but see, you know, there you go. It market demographics, algorithms. Wow, we could get tangled up in that forever, couldn't we? Or we could just keep making good music and go out and do a tour and see how it goes down.
If I was the Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, I would invest pools of money into artists to create their craft. Just like at one point they used to do, at least in the 70s. I wasn't born at that time, but I know my father was kind of that last generation of people who went to sixth form and then to college afterwards to study arts and photography. So I've kind of bring that back and people honing their craft, even if the Tories and even some Labour people will say, oh, it's not making enough money, it's not making enough tax revenue for Great Britain. Or says, oh, give these people a chance. It almost feels as though they have to slave away at Tesco. Maybe not everyone wants to slave away at Tesco or Amazon.
Creative industries in Britain, well, it's everywhere. The creative industries bringing a huge amount of money. Not that that's what it's about, though, is it really? It's, you know, I think you have to look at beyond the sort of economics and the finances of it and just look at it as a, you know, people need art, people need music. It makes people feel better, particularly we're just coming through this shitty pandemic. People need something else to latch onto. Music soothes. It makes you find a better place. It makes you find something good in yourself. We should, as does art, as does theatre, we should be encouraging that, not trying to find ways of knocking it down. And you know, it needs to be, at least give people the opportunity to make the stuff, to make the music, to make the art, I say. And the only way, well, probably the best way to do that is to kick this bloody government out and you know.
Well, tell that to people who live in Surrey and like West Yorkshire. They might say, oh, I don't know about that, lad. As long as we get all them immigrants and we get our Brexit, we'll be all right for it, love.
See, we were very lucky in that we were funded by the Arts Council of Wales. That whole Tuki Buki project, which became Hyena, was funded by the Arts Council of Wales, which I'm not trying to contradict what you guys are saying, but there is hope. There are organisations doing what they can to fund.
But their funding has been reduced all the time, isn't it?
Of course, yeah.
No,
yeah.
I agree, Rich. Of course, yeah.
Well, I know Wales is a little different because since devolution, they kind of have their own parliamentary powers. I actually will thank Arts Council Cymru for doing that there. Well, actually already done here as far as the interview is concerned.
I've really enjoyed chatting, actually. It's been nice. Thanks, man. And your bass impressions are phenomenal. So at least it knows if ever I hurt myself and I can't play, I'm going to give you a call. You just do a bit of air bass and sound for me, all right?
Hey, feel free to count me in. Till then, last one.
Yeah.